This entire pre-order situation, in North America at least, is a complete disaster that could have also been completely averted, and Nintendo America's form of damage control is just saying, sorry, we'll do the exact same thing with the exact same mistakes later on in the future, and then just not talking about Xenoblade anymore. So that's kind of fantastic. Full disclosure, I did get a pre-order in to the point of having a confirmation email in my inbox, so unless they cancel that because I'm complaining about them on YouTube, I do have a special edition in the bag, so none of the stuff I'm talking about affects me anymore, at least. I did waste my entire Wednesday getting that order in, but I am using my platform to complain on the behalf of the 90% of you who did not get your orders in. Also, keep in mind, if you are in a region outside of North America, you probably don't know what I'm talking about unless you have friends that do live here, because Europe didn't even get to pre-order at all yet, and I'm sure their situation is also going to be a disaster just because of people from North America making alt accounts to order it from there because they couldn't get it in North America. Japan has been fine ever since the special edition was first announced when the second trailer came out months ago, and Australia and New Zealand's pre-orders went off without a hitch whatsoever because their Nintendo branch is more competent, apparently. Before I explain why I am mad, and you should be as well, I do think it's important to go over the things that are absolutely out of the control of the people responsible for this entire disaster, because some things absolutely couldn't have been avoided. First off, I have not seen anybody blaming Monolith Soft and the actual developers of Xenoblade 3 for the situation. It's a Nintendo of America exclusive issue here whatsoever, so that's not a big deal. I don't think anyone got that wrong opinion out of any of that whatsoever, and that's good. I'm glad this community is that aware and intelligent enough to at least blame the correct people when something goes this catastrophically wrong. The other thing you could reasonably argue you should be mad at Nintendo for doing is also definitely not the fault of whoever's responsible for this pre-order debacle, and that is the whole fact that when you order the special edition, you don't actually get the special edition on launch day. For those of you who did not know, if you order the special edition, on the release date of the game, the only thing you're actually going to get is a physical copy of Xenoblade 3, while all of the special edition materials, so that is the box, the steelbook, the art book, are going to be coming in a nebulous fall time slot. And that's actually why if you did get a pre-order, your order is actually listed as 2 items, a copy of Xenoblade 3 and the special edition materials. This is almost certainly because of the release date swap, because fall sounds a whole lot like September when the game was originally supposed to release before it was pushed up. It's pretty obvious that something going on, likely with Splatoon, internally led to this release date being changed, and Xenoblade just happened to be the game that was the most done and could be easily pushed up into that July-ish time slot. So while it is really unfortunate, the fact remains that it's probably a lot easier for Nintendo to print out a bunch of games that were already done 2 months early than print out a bunch of boxes and art books and get steelbooks made 2 months early, especially since those probably have to be contracted out to a different company. So I can't really begrudge them for making this decision because it's probably the only way to still have a special edition while adhering to the bumped up release date. The thing that it is a bit more reasonable to be annoyed about is the fact that as soon as that second trailer dropped and revealed the special edition in the first place, Japan was able to place pre-orders for it and has been able to do so the entire time, while the entire rest of the world had to wait until June 8th at the earliest. I'm guessing this is just a sort of internal logistics thing. Nintendo of Japan knew earlier than anyone else that Xenoblade 3 was going to be releasing 2 months earlier, so Nintendo of Japan had a jump over the entire rest of the world when it came to setting up the logistics for making these orders and shipping out the special editions in 2 batches. I agree that it's completely non-ideal, and I'm going to get to the entire reason the North American situation is a complete disaster in a minute, but there is nothing inherently wrong with different regions getting to open pre-orders at the same time. If Nintendo was a less international corporation and didn't have offices in every region, this would probably be a necessary thing to do just to completely prevent their servers from breaking, which, hey, happened in only one region anyway, no matter what they tried. But either way, I think the smarter decision would have been to release all Western region pre-orders at the same time, because that would have almost certainly averted at least some of the crisis Europe is going to go through, where disgruntled North American fans who are unable to get their copies there are now going to be taking up copies from Europe, heightening demand there, and probably kicking a bunch of European fans who would have normally been able to get their copy no problem out of the line. Now, however, it's time for your feature presentation, the story of how Nintendo of America screwed up beyond compare, and how there's basically no way they'll ever be able to regain all of the goodwill from Xenoblade fans they lost with this move. While viewing this as part of some big master plan NOA higher-ups have to keep Xenoblade from ever catching on in the region is delusional at best, the fact remains that, while yeah, they lost a ton of goodwill from Xenoblade fans with this, they never really had a lot to begin with. NOA has a history of handling Xenoblade releases as poorly as possible. Starting at the very beginning with Xenoblade 1, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that NOA initially didn't even want to release the game in North America in the first place. And while we do have statements that the Operation Rainfall fan campaign was not entirely the reason they decided to actually go forward with the localization, the fact still remains, it took fan pressure for them to even release Xenoblade in North America in the first place, with that release coming over 6 months later than the European and Australia New Zealand versions, as well as having several additional drawbacks. After finally deciding to release a product that they were initially not going to, but decided to do so anyway because of a large fan demand, of course the smart decision for Nintendo to do was to make it a retailer exclusive at GameStop. Admittedly, this was 2012, so a lot of the worst stuff about GameStop that we know of now that caused a lot of the gaming community to view buying from them as just kind of morally wrong had not happened yet, so the idea of going and picking up Xenoblade from GameStop wasn't really a bad thing. It was the fact that GameStop was the only way to get it, because hey, guess what? Not everyone has a GameStop near them, and tons of those people wanted to play Xenoblade. This isn't even getting into the actual shortage of copies there was, and how poorly GameStop handled everything, including the entire scandal where they got a reprint made in 2013, then used a loophole to sell the completely new reprinted copies as pre-owned in order to put them above MSRP, but that's outside the scope of the video, and I would rather just direct you to the fantastic Xenobits piece on that. Either way, starting a worrying trend for the series, there were not enough physical copies of the game printed in North America to meet demand, and it took a 3DS port, a re-release on the Wii U eShop, and Definitive Edition before I could guarantee that you would have access to a reasonably priced version of Xenoblade 1 no matter where in North America you were or what time you were trying to buy it. And ignoring Gears and Saga, Xenoblade 1 is the easiest game in the series to get a physical copy of. Oh right, also, Europe actually got a limited edition version of Xenoblade 1 that came with a Monado Red Classic controller you couldn't get anywhere else. North America did not. Also, for some reason, the otherwise Japan-exclusive Xenoblade 1 art book got a small French localization run in Club Nintendo, so I don't really know what to say about that. That's just weird. Moving on to Xenoblade X, NOA handled the localization themselves for this one, and that makes perfect sense. They should have. A very big part of the story of that game is that the characters are from the city of New Los Angeles, so them having British accents would have been very stupid. The game being localized in the US makes perfect sense. I will also go further to say most of the criticism Nintendo of America gets for some of the changes they made in the localization process is completely unjustified, though there are several changes that make little sense at all, and it still took 8 months after the Japanese version for the localization to come out in the first place. International buyers did get the advantage of all the stuff that was DLC in the Japanese version being straight on disc, so we had to pay less for the complete Xenoblade X package, which is a good thing, but I don't know if it was worth the 8 months wait because I got spoiled, and X is the Xenoblade game with the least plot, so that's great. Then there is the special edition debacle, and no, I am not flashing forward to the Xenoblade 3 one. They screwed up major with X's as well. The one thing that is constant across all Xenoblade special editions, which I think is just a factor of everything and not really anything that will ever be able to be changed, is the fact that if you pre-order a special edition, you will not be receiving your game on release day, you will be getting it the Monday after release at best. This has meant that even though I am big Xenoblade fan man and have been buying every special edition of every game since Xenoblade X, I have had to purchase a second copy of the game just so I could actually play the thing I bought on release date, which is great for the sales numbers and Monolith continually being allowed to make more Xenoblade games, but is extremely anti-consumer. If you pre-order something, you should probably get it on the day it releases. Now, X's special edition came with a custom Lifehold shaped flash drive that contains several songs from the game. This flash drive was god-awful. It contained terrible DRM that prevented you from actually taking the songs off the flash drive, which, if you're keeping track, does in fact mean that the Xenoblade 2 and certain regions of Xenoblade DE special editions coming with CDs you could actually rip music from is a new step forward for the franchise. But you also were unable to format over the flash drive and put your own things on it. In fact, when I tried doing that myself, even using some of the reputable workarounds I'd seen on the internet that several people had said actually worked for them, not only did I brick the flash drive so bad that no computer I've put it in the past 6 years has actually recognized it as something, but it also almost bricked the laptop I had in high school, and when I tried it on my parents' computer, it almost bricked that as well, and I think might have contributed to that computer's slow degradation that has caused it to completely not recognize one of the hard drives in it. Thanks for that, Nintendo. As for Xenoblade 2, you know what? I have nothing really to complain about. You did good on that one, NOA. If I had to nitpick, I guess I would say that it is kind of lame that the Pyra Pro controller took a few days to come in after the special edition, which already came in 3 days after the game actually launched, again making me buy a second copy, but that's really small potatoes compared to everything else that went well with the Xenoblade 2 launch worldwide. If I had to complain to Nintendo about anything, it would be forcing the game to hold to its holiday release date while still taking a bunch of Monolith's employees off to fix Breath of the Wild, which led to several key features of Xenoblade 2 either never being added or only being added after release in free updates. But as for the North American launch, it actually went off without a hitch. Oh, sorry, the launch went fine, but the rest of the game's life cycle didn't. Despite Xenoblade 2 being the most popular game in the series and most popular game Monolith Soft has developed fully themselves, and getting a character in Smash, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has never been reprinted in North America, which means it's impossible to get a physical copy for MSRP. The situation with the physical Torn of the Golden Country DLC is even worse. This means that my sealed copy of Torn of the Golden Country, the $40 expansion to the $60 game, is now the second most valuable single game non-special edition piece in my Xeno collection, only being beaten out by the legendarily rare Xenosaga Episode 3. Great job, Nintendo! You did something to promote Xenoblade 2, and then kept people from buying Xenoblade 2, because you didn't want to reprint it. And then we come to Definitive Edition. While you might remember the arc of NOA never talking about it or advertising it whatsoever, and fans having to shill it for them until the point where they finally actually did things with it on their social media channels, I think that was always just a planned part of their promotion cycle and not any sort of malice or incompetence. We were just getting overzealous because we're Xenoblade fans and that's what we do. However, the North American Special Edition was completely lacking compared to the European one, and the only advantage it had over any of the other region ones was the fact that its art book was hardcover, which now meant I needed to buy 3 copies of the game, a European Special Edition for the actual interesting Special Edition content, a North American Special Edition for the hardcover art book, which I could then combine with the European Special Edition to make the perfect edition of Definitive Edition, and then a digital copy just so I could actually play the game I'd already bought twice for more than MSRP on release date. DE actually got a couple My Nintendo rewards as well, which is really nice because Xenoblade games getting merch is something very rare. Your options are basically amiibos or figures that cost several hundred US, and because I'm me, I am going for both of those, but most people would want a bit more mid-range merch for Xenoblade and have to rely on fans for that, which is not a bad thing. There are plenty of talented artists and other creatives in the Xenoblade community, and I love seeing people support them monetarily for doing all of their fantastic work. However, getting some official acknowledgement in the form of merch is always a good thing, and that's why I was excited to see that there were some Xenoblade Definitive Edition stickers and a Monado phone holder available as My Nintendo rewards. I had more than enough reward points to pay for both, so I got both of them, threw them in my cart, and realized, oh, for these free products you do still have to pay $5 in shipping, and I didn't really feel like entering credit card info into another website for the purpose of spending $5 on a free product. So I figured, okay, you can still buy physical games directly from Nintendo, why don't I just do that? Age of Calamity is the next first-party title that I'm looking forward to getting. I'll buy that directly from Nintendo. As soon as pre-orders become available, I'll buy that as well, and get that and the Xenoblade stuff in one shipment, so I only have to pay shipping once. Well, that didn't work very well, because intermittently the entire time the Monado phone holder was going in and out of stock, so that was fantastic. It took several days just to get that in my cart and pay for it with the reward points in the first place, and then they just kind of completely shuffled them out. I had codes saying that I was allowed to buy these things, but I could not enter the codes to put them in my cart anymore because you weren't allowed to buy them anymore. And no, when they did that, I did not get my platinum points back. Nintendo.com just completely ate them and didn't give me anything for it. So yeah, the Xenoblade 3 Special Edition debacle was not the first time I got screwed over by a Xenoblade thing on Nintendo of America's website. And then we get to the present day, the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Special Edition. I could comment on how this SE is extremely underwhelming compared to the European DE one or the worldwide X and 2 ones, but that's arguably not Nintendo of America's fault. They probably couldn't go too hard with this in the first place with the release date change, and if they were able to change the release date this close to when it was supposed to come out, it was probably nebulous to begin with, and they just threw September up as their best guess in the first place, which means they probably couldn't go all out like they did with some previous games, and it's standardized throughout all regions of the world this time, which means it was probably out of Nintendo of America's hands. That part, I am not blaming them. Everything else is on them, and something that never should have happened. When the second trailer dropped and they revealed the special edition, they also revealed the fact that it would be exclusive to the My Nintendo store, which is fantastic, because making a Xenoblade game retailer exclusive in the past definitely worked perfectly for them and had no issues whatsoever. This time though, it's exclusive to their store, so if things go wrong, they can at least still get all the money from it. And while yes, Japanese pre-orders were available the instant the trailer dropped, international ones just said, follow this region's Nintendo Twitter account for updates. So the only way for you to possibly know when you were allowed to buy the special edition in other regions of the world was to turn notifications on for a Nintendo Twitter account, which was then going to be advertising to you the entire time. So you then had to have notifications on for games other than the one you were interested in constantly thrown at you for an indeterminate period of time because they gave zero time frame for when the pre-orders would actually be available. Then on June 7th, they said, okay, pre-orders will be available tomorrow, June 8th. They gave 1 day's notice and just said it would be sometime during that day. They did not even give a time the pre-orders would go up on the 8th. Couple that with the extremely limited availability most North American Xenoblade games have been faced with, and the ever-present threat of scalpers, which are always worse with the Nintendo things for some reason, and that meant people basically just had to start camping out at their computers starting at like 8 or 9 a.m. Pacific time on the 8th, and sit around until they decided to open pre-orders and hope they got one. And again, that much wouldn't be too bad if they'd actually said that it would be going up at 8 or 9 Pacific time. They did not give a time frame. It could have been at any point during working hours for the West Coast of the United States, which means you had to plan out your entire day around maybe getting a copy, so plenty of people just cleared their entire day for that, including taking off work or using a work from home day. As if that was not bad enough, there were several reports before 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, that pages surrounding the Xenoblade 3 Special Edition were breaking down. And then, after that, Nintendo of America officially tweeted at 11:32 a.m. Eastern, 8:32 a.m. Pacific, that the Special Edition pre-orders were officially up and gave a link that you could follow straight to them. And nothing worked properly for the rest of the day. Sometimes the page wouldn't load. Sometimes it would load, but you weren't allowed to log in, and it would just refresh when you hit the login button. Sometimes it would still say, Xenoblade 3 Special Edition, release date TBD. Sometimes it would say, item limit reached when you didn't have any in your cart, despite the item limit being 2 to try and prevent scalping. Sometimes it would place you on a please wait, you are currently in a queue to view this page screen, which was not actually true, as I kept some pages with the queue up open for over 6 hours and nothing happened with them. It would also be hilariously inconsistent with whether or not you were actually logged into the website. Many people, including myself, had logged in days before and just had it remember our login information, so we'd have one less click to do when trying to order the thing. And depending on how the website felt, it would either accurately show I was logged in, but have my cart empty and unable to be viewed, not show me as logged in at all, but say that I did have something in my cart, we'll get back to what was actually in there later, or say that I was logged in and didn't have anything in my cart. Within the first hour of the situation, I did actually manage to get something in my cart and get to the checkout screen, But the first time I tried to check out, when I started entering my address into the autocomplete address bar, which was the only way to do that, it would never autocomplete. The second time, it actually remembered my address from when I had to enter it in when making the account in the first place, except it didn't let me choose a shipping method, despite there only being one shipping method available for the bundle. And then the third time, it actually got as far as the make purchase option, but then it emptied the cart and said that I was paying $0 for 0 items. I did not get as far as that, again, for another 6 hours. At 11:57 a.m., Nintendo of America tweets, "We apologize for any inconvenience that you may be experiencing while attempting to pre-order the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Special Edition. The My Nintendo store is experiencing a high volume of traffic, and we appreciate your patience while we look into the issue." The issues never improved until later in the day, when I can only assume less people were still trying to get in and it was able to let a few people through, and that was the last communication they had for almost 10 hours. At this point, I had heard several stories of people almost getting to the logout screen or having the exact same issues I was in other regards, and no one who had actually purchased a special edition copy of the game yet. The only indication that anyone had bought them was the fact that, yup, guess what? There were several scalped listings up on eBay already for several $100s, when, may I remind you, the actual MSRP that everyone was completely willing to pay if Nintendo's website functioned properly was $90. Every single one of these issues continued on without further communication from Nintendo throughout the entirety of Wednesday and well into the evening, with no one making any headway, until certain high-profile social media accounts like Wario64 began coming up with workarounds that would get you into a different section of Nintendo's site that would allow you to actually see your cart and make the transaction. Before that happened, I was going full chaos route with this and trying to break the site even further than it was already broken in order to get around the parts that weren't letting me buy Xenoblade. So I attempted to add something else to my cart to see if that would change things. I tried to buy a copy of Super Mario 3D World, and while I never actually paid for that, there certainly was one item in my cart throughout the entire day, and for most of it, I wasn't actually sure if it was a copy of the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Special Edition, or just that copy of Mario 3D World. While the workarounds were able to get me and a not insignificant amount of other people through and actually make a purchase, even those sites started crashing too, because at this point it was very clear there was something fundamentally wrong and outdated with all of Nintendo of America's website's back end. One of the most common sites, besides the 6 icons on the loading screen, that united the Xenoblade community throughout this entire day. Now, keep in mind, this was really stupid, but June 8th was the least arguing amongst the Xenoblade community I have seen in years, like, since before Xenoblade 2 came out, so that was actually really nice to see. But one of the big things that united everyone was this render of Wario that showed up on one of the error screens. This Wario comes from Mario Party 9, a game that released over 10 years ago as of this entire catastrophe happening. I am completely convinced that the base infrastructure of the website had not been updated since that render of Wario was first added in 2012. I don't remember exactly when my order finally was able to go through using the Wario 64 workaround, but it was before all the workaround methods people were finding went down as well, so it must have been a bit earlier than like 6 p.m. Eastern, I'm gonna say. I do know my confirmation email finally came in at 6:51 p.m., and I remember distinctly that that took a really long time, so long that I was concerned the transaction didn't actually occur because, of course, I couldn't log in and view my purchase history, which meant I had to go and check the credit card transactions to make sure that, you know, that transaction actually happened and Nintendo didn't just pretend to take $95 from me, or take $95 from me and not actually say that I bought the thing. And yes, I did completely luck out by actually being able to get an order in. Many people were not so lucky, and just sat there completely waiting for several hours even after I managed to get mine in, until eventually, I don't know the exact timing for this either, they just straight up put the Xenoblade 3 Special Edition back on release date TBD, and prevented anyone from even adding it to their cart. Several people who had already added it to their cart were not able to check out. Anyone who had it in their cart at the time it was moved back to TBD had it removed from their cart, and the website was still not working and letting people log in properly, so people didn't know if they had even added it to their cart properly. Then a not insignificant time after that happened, Nintendo of America finally broke their silence to tweet at 9:49 p.m. Eastern Time, so a time where a lot of people who had been struggling early in the day were probably not checking the internet anymore. We recognize that many have been unable to pre-order the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Special Edition today on My Nintendo Store, and we sincerely apologize for this inconvenience. We are continuing to investigate and work toward a resolution of the issue. Pre-purchase of the Special Edition will be made available again at a later date. An update will be provided once that timing is determined. You may also experience an issue in purchasing physical products on My Nintendo Store at this time. We are working to resolve this as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. So, they took it down, and then several hours later, gave a complete non-apology and non-explanation for why things went down in the first place. I would also like to point out that this tweet came out just under 10 hours from the last tweet announcing that yes, we are aware that there was trouble in the first place, and no clear indication that they'd actually done anything to fix the trouble other than sit around and wait and hope people would give up lessening the server load whatsoever. Them using the most corporate safe wording possible, saying many people did not get to order the special edition when I would say that only 10% of the people who were camping out all day actually got something, is not surprising. And this is Nintendo, who is notorious for being extremely anti-consumer, but even for them, the fact that their entire response for their entire store being down for 10 hours was, "Oops, sorry, we screwed up. Our apology to you is you get to do this again at another time, which we have not determined yet, and probably will not give you fair warning of again, with no indication that we will actually do anything better next time." You know the best thing about all of this? Look back at the last tweet. You may also experience an issue in purchasing physical products on the store. This did not just affect the Xenoblade pre-orders. This affected every single non-digital thing available on the store, and the login issues persisted no matter what page of the store you were visiting. This was not a thing where they underestimated demand from Xenoblade fans and the store entirely crashed. This exact crash happened when the Switch Online exclusive N64 controllers went up for pre-order, and I guarantee that more people were interested in that than Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That happened several months ago, and they had 3 months since the Xenoblade 3 reveal to gauge people's interest and properly structure their website and pre-order structure for it. Again, this also affected the entire website. It did not matter if you wanted Xenoblade 3 or something else entirely. If you wanted to buy something from My Nintendo on June 8th, 2022, you did not get to because the website was completely broken, because they didn't think that people might want to pre-order a video game that they were making only available to pre-order on their own website. Do you know what came out 2 days after those pre-orders went up? Mario Strikers Battle League. Do you know what's probably going to sell several times more copies than Xenoblade 3? Mario Strikers Battle League. So yes, people who wanted to pre-order a game that is almost certainly going to be miles more popular than Xenoblade 3 didn't get to do that because they screwed up the Xenoblade 3 pre-orders so spectacularly. And once again, their entire quote-unquote apology for this wasn't, "Oh, sorry many people wasted their entire day." It was, "Sorry you didn't get to give us money. We're gonna do the exact same thing at a later date that we're also probably not gonna give you fair warning for, and hope it works better this time because enough people and enough scalper accounts already got their pre-orders in the first time." If you want to know just how badly they screwed this up, pre-orders were open for roughly 10 hours before they completely gave up and closed them down entirely. You know how I said many people took time out of their actual real-life, real-world work schedules in order to do this because they weren't given an actual start time and knew that this might screw up so badly it would take all day? Well, I'm not going to make an argument that some people might have actually been able to work those entire 10 hours because that is not a thing anyone should be doing in one day. But I will make the argument at how ridiculous this is based off of that. Someone working for 10 hours at US minimum wage before any deductions prior to getting their actual paycheck will make more than enough money to purchase a normal copy of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 with any sales tax rate in the nation. And to go one step further, someone in my home state of New Jersey, which has a minimum wage almost double that, the national minimum, would be able to make enough money to purchase a Xenoblade 3 Special Edition with sales tax in its entirety. The website was broken for so long that people could have been working for the same amount of time it was broken and made enough money to buy the thing they were unable to buy in those 10 hours in the first place. And again, the response to the thing breaking was not to fix the thing, It was to take the thing down and decide they'll try to do the exact same thing again a second time and hope it doesn't break this time. And to put that just little extra walnut grape on top of this sundae of awful, do you know what Nintendo of America has been doing since then? Well, every day, the official Japanese Xenoblade series Twitter account posts little tidbits about Xenoblade 3. While a lot of these do rely heavily on Japanese cutscenes or UI, the ones that don't get localized and posted later on in the day by various other regional Nintendo accounts like Australia, New Zealand, UK, and Europe. There was a post the day following this whole pre-order debacle. I'm recording this on the 9th, the day after this, so I can't talk about the Friday, June 10th one, but I can talk about what happened on the 9th. 2 of the 3 Japanese tweets heavily involved Japanese UI, so those are never getting localized, that's not a big deal. The third one was a straight upload of a song from the game, with visuals that only needed to be changed insofar as replacing the Japanese name of the song with the English one. Every single regional Nintendo account that usually tweets those out, tweeted it out, except Nintendo of America. Their new strategy is to just ignore Xenoblade and pretend it doesn't exist, because they know they're going to get pushback every time they show it without fixing the pre-order situation. I wouldn't even be surprised if they just kinda silently stop marketing the game until they can get a handle on this, which guess what? That's totally going to affect sales. Xenoblade 3 is going to perform worse, in addition to the people who now don't want to buy the game because of the pre-order debacle, because they don't want to hear criticism for making a massive mistake. Oh, and you know what else? The My Nintendo store still isn't working properly for me or anyone else I've asked in the past day. But do you know what does let me log in and view everything in perfect, crisp detail exactly like a functioning website should? The confirmation page and invoice for my pre-order that confirmed I did in fact give Nintendo money. The site works perfectly fine if you were able to pay them. This should have been everyone who attempted to get a pre-order who is able to do that. But no, apparently being able to give the company money is a privilege that you have to spend time and tons of luck on. To add extra insult to injury, the website is broken so much that part of the invoice page displays in French, and part of one of the error pages I got throughout most of Wednesday displayed partially in Spanish, when Canada and Mexico had an even worse time of pre-orders than the US did. And yet, I can still see their language versions of the website. I don't know what it means, but it's nothing good, that's for sure. This is the kind of situation that was botched so horribly that most game publishers would actually try to compensate everyone affected by it for, except this is Nintendo, so you know that it's not going to happen. Instead of non-apologies, the bare minimum anything they should be doing is going through, seeing every account that viewed the Xenoblade 3 Special Edition during the time it was supposed to have been available for pre-order, and giving all of them a free $30 worth of My Nintendo points. That is enough to cover the cost of the Special Edition materials portion of the bundle, which means that anyone who is actually able to get an order in will only have to pay the base price of a normal copy of Xenoblade 3 because of all the hoops they had to jump through to get the order, and people who didn't manage to get one at least got something to show for the fact that they wasted 10 hours of their time. What they should also be doing is making the Special Edition available from multiple retailers in the first place, so the one source they have doesn't completely implode when people who like Xenoblade so much they're willing to spend more than the base price of the game on an admittedly kind of lackluster by series standard Special Edition try to buy product from Nintendo. They should also do more than erect a barrier of tissue paper to prevent scalpers from going through, because a 2-item limit isn't going to do anything when you can just spam bot the Nintendo store and still get 2 copies on multiple accounts and put them up on eBay. The bare minimum they should be doing for that is at least limiting the first wave of pre-orders to accounts that are connected to a copy of either Xenoblade 2 or Xenoblade Definitive Edition, so at the very least you can confirm that this Special Edition is going to a Xenoblade fan. Oh, and if they're not able to send out the Special Edition materials on the game launch day, that means they're not ready yet, which means they can make more. They should be well aware of the demand for the Special Edition and the chronic supply issues they've had with the Xenoblade series for the past decade in North America, and I don't know, maybe instead of taking a limited number of pre-orders, take an interest check and make special editions to order so that everyone who wants one can actually get one, and we can have just one Xeno game in North America that actually goes for MSRP or under in the future? Should they be doing all of these and more? Yes. Will they do any of this? No. You will get your second day of non-functioning website and you will like it, because the only way to ensure that the Xeno series continues to be a thing in the future is to chuck more money at Nintendo, because there's no way Bandai Namco is going to do anything significant with Xeno Saga without contacting Monolith, who is owned by them. And Square Enix does not remember Xenogears exists unless they can shove their characters into another predatory gacha game. There is no winning here, and Nintendo is never going to improve because they have done things like this before for other series and never gotten better about it. They continue to enable scalpers and do predatory limited releases, all the while barely communicating with their fans when something goes wrong, and doing, it seems, everything in their power to make it as hard as possible to actually give them money for the products they're making. This isn't even 10 years behind the times like Nintendo usually is. As far as my short life is concerned, this is the ancient past. They're out here still acting like they haven't released Donkey Kong yet, when they're one of the biggest video game publishers in the world. It is 2022, and you can't even make a functional online store interface. Do better. That is all I've got for today, though. I am absolutely negatived out, so the rant that I've been wanting to make for a long time about how Square doesn't respect Xenogears, I'm gonna put that on the back burner for a really long time, because I don't like ranting like this. I will call out things I don't like about Xenoblade 3 when I see them in my analyses, but I am overwhelmingly positive on that game, and I like gushing about all the amazing things I see in it. Monolith Soft has done basically nothing wrong when it comes to Xenoblade 3, so it's even more disappointing to see Nintendo's own incompetence that was completely out of Monolith's control cause oodles of bad publicity for the series right when they're on the cusp of maybe finally getting to actually finish a Xeno story arc on their own terms for the first time in 24 years. I love gushing about all the amazing things we've seen so far out of Xenoblade 3, and I hope you like listening to me do that too. And tune in tomorrow where I go over and analyze all the new amazing info they've given us in the past week. Until then, keep playing Xeno. I am Luxon,